When a company is seeking top talent for a position, generally they make sure the salary is competitive. So perhaps it's not surprising that in order to get the top talent in politics, some have suggested raising politicians' salaries. Then again, others think politicians are overpaid already. A group of researchers set out to determine what effect salaries have on the type of people who become politicians. To study this relationship, they looked at the salaries of members of the European Parliament, or MEPs.
And the reason why the European Parliament turned out to be a great laboratory for this, it had a very interesting history of salary setting. Prior to 2009, MEPs were paid out of their home country budgets and were paid the same amount as someone from a lower parliament of their home country. This meant that, say, Hungarian MEPs made 10,000 euros a year, while Italian MEPs made something like 144,000 euros a year. So it's kind of interesting to just imagine this dynamic of these people who work together in Strasbourg and Brussels and debate legislation, and where one person has literally 14 times the salary of another.
Imagine two MEPs going to a lunch meeting. While one of them wants to go to a Michelin-rated restaurant, the other probably can't afford to eat out at all. But in 2009, the EU changed the way it pays MEPs.
So now, the Hungarians, the Spaniards, the Italians, and all of the other MEPs were all going to get the same amount, roughly around 92,000 euros in 2009. This, of course, meant that for some, there was a huge raise, a 9-fold raise for Hungarians, but for others, like Italians, there was a big pay cut.
And this change allowed the researchers to analyze how much the salary matters when MEPs are deciding if they'd like to run for re-election.
We find that politicians are, in fact, at least members of the European Parliament, are in fact quite sensitive to salary in their decision to stand for re-election. On average, about 57% of MEPs stand for re-election, but if you double MEP salaries, and keep in mind doubling the salaries well within the range of what we observed, that 57% increases by about 23 percentage points, or about 40%.
But the researchers also find that not all types of MEPs are affected by the salary increase. One of the factors that influences the strength of this effect is the quality of the undergraduate education.
So these people come from a variety of countries. It's not very easy to speak about how good their education is, so we have a very rough, very crude measure of quality of their education. We just ask, did they go to one of the top 500 schools in the world, using a global ranking of world universities? And we find that this increase in the willingness to stand for re-election is there only for MEPs that did not go to a top school.
In other words, MEPs who did go to a top quality school are unaffected by salary increases when it comes to standing for re-election. What's more, the quality of the undergraduate education is also one of the key predictors of legislative output. So in addition to being less affected by salary changes, those MEPs who went to a top school are also more productive.
So one story that might suggest itself, though this is circumstantial evidence, is there are really two types of individuals who go into politics. There are those for whom salary is an important reason to do it. And then you could think of the other set as the more idealistic. They really could make more money doing something else, but they care about this, they care about the process, they care about the legislation, and so on. So this is an important thing to keep in mind when thinking about how salaries of politicians influence both the willingness of those politicians to stand for office and the likely changes in composition of who becomes a politician that might ensue.